Well, good evening. It is another Wednesday Eve, and I am back with the book, A Course in Miracles. And for those of you who have been joining me in the past, I welcome you back. For any new people that may be showing up, I encourage you to exercise patience and follow the discussions here, and you may arrive at a point where you have enough curiosity to pick up A Course in Miracles and try to put it into practice. So, and we've got Liani and Sunny are hanging out with me tonight. That's beautiful. Lisa, how are you this evening? It's a lovely evening here in the Midwest. It feels very autumnal. We've got that first dramatic drop in the weather. It's gone from very hot to nice chilly evenings and the beginnings of the celebration of fall. Before long, we'll be surrounding ourselves with pumpkins and all sorts of imagery around the harvest and the home. So, good evening, Becky. Tonight, I am going to be talking to you. Hello, Vicky. I'm going to be chatting with you about Lesson 124, Let Me Remember That I Am One with God. And this is when we start to get to that precipice. You know, if you have seen Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade, there's a place there where Indy has to rely entirely on trust and take that first step onto an invisible bridge that leads him across this huge chasm. And that's what this lesson really is about. It is asking us to trust all of the things that we instinctively believe to be real, and yet physical evidence is very scarce for its reality. In other words, your sensory input is going to tell you there is a huge chasm in front of you, and there is no way in hell that you're not going to plunge into the depths of it if you take a step off of your little ledge. And that's the ego's litany. That's what the ego is all about. The ego loves to keep us in a state of fear. And that's basically the cause of all of our problems. You know, we defend our ego, we protect our ego, we identify with our ego, and yet ultimately the ego is trying to confine us. It's trying to hold us back and limit us. So this is a lesson that is like the first step in that direction to the return to God. And bear with me, I've got a little bit of a lingering cough, but that's one of the many illusions I'm playing around with right now. So, we'll start off today's lesson with, let me remember I am one with God. Today we will again give thanks for our identity in God. And the Course reiterates that over and over and over again, that there is only God. So if you think there is God and somebody else or something else, then you're listening to the voice of the ego. And the ego has, managed to convince that little sliver of a part of our mind that we need this material world. We need to be able to objectify everything and identify with this material reality. The truth is, this material reality is ephemeral. It's always changing. You can never, rest assured that something is going to happen to your benefit. You're always on the quest, looking out for your own self-interest and trying just to scramble through and buy another day. and if you are one of those who has a pile of money and you're counting on that, you'll find that other things go askew. And ultimately, there is always this fear of some kind of an impending doom. And if we look around politically right now at the world that surrounds us, fear is the thing that is driving this realm. It is perpetuating itself. It is pushing itself forward on the timeline and causing us to look back on the timeline with regret or frustration or enmity. So we're always in that position of regretting the past or feeling abused by the past, feeling like we were a victim of the past, or else we're living in anticipation of an undefined future. And, all of this stuff about creating your own reality is, it's a very seductive idea where, oh yeah, I'm going to read a book and take all that information and create paradise and step into that and live in paradise forever and forever. And I have yet to find anybody who's actually succeeded with that. So I think one of the things that we definitely need to be very conscious of in this material world is the fact that it is like a snake covered with Vaseline. That was a phrase I heard today about the Kavanaugh situation in the Supreme Court. And there's always this kind of a drama going on. It doesn't matter who it is or what the situation is, there's always going to be an edge. There's always going to be a downside because this world functions on duality. So let's aspire to reclaim our Christhood, to reclaim our divinity, to reclaim the God that dwells within us so that we are no longer in a perilous situation. And like I was saying before, the first step is always the scariest step, where you're letting go of this world and putting your trust in God. It goes, today we will again give thanks for our identity in God. Our home is safe. Protection is guaranteed in all we do. Power and strength available to us in all our undertakings. We can fail in nothing. Now here is the catch to this, these couple of sentences that I just read. And that is that it is absolute surrender to God that creates the circumstances where we arrive at a place where we can fail in nothing. In other words, if you're putting together ego agendas and wanting to go out there with the expectation that you're going to combine the power of God with the agenda of the ego, then you're going to fall on your face, because you can't mix the two. As much as you may hope and desire for that to be the conditions of life, it definitely doesn't work that way. So we have to be willing to take that leap of faith, which is to trust in God and to allow God to create a path, to create a series of goals, to create a vision for us to step into. That's the only way that the course is going to work for you. It is all about trust. Goes on to say, everything we touch takes on a shining light that blesses and that heals. At one with God and with the universe, we go our way rejoicing, with the thought that God himself goes everywhere with us. And at some point, as you're doing this kind of work, as you are trying to bring yourself to a state of greater awakening, you are going to have that confrontation where the ego is going to tell you, oh, this absolutely will not work, and you might as well, do this as an alternative, do the damage control, respond out of fear, uh, run around in circles, bury your head in the sand, whatever. The ego's always got an agenda. But when you can arrive at a point where something comes up on the screen of your life, you know, and that's really what it is. We're watching a movie, imagining ourselves to be a part of that movie, that is our life. And the truth is, none of that is real. But as we're running around desperately seeking answers, there will be something arrive that is really scary, and you're going to have to just let go and say, okay, God, I can't do anything here. I am at the impasse. And it is at that point where the breakthrough occurs. When you completely surrender your fear and you stand up and have a little bit of a backbone in life, and you say, this is not real. God did not create this. God created out of love, and this is not based in love. Then you're starting to prepare yourself to take your next big step. So when that event or that circumstance arrives in your life, it is the beginning of the development of trust. And the trust is the foundation for that segue from identifying yourself with the ego and with your body and with your separation and with all of your joys and sorrows to moving in the direction of your true identity, and that is Christ. And what is Christ? Well, Christ is God in reflection. In other words, you are one of an infinite number of ideas that God has of itself. So you are God projected into infinity, because we are limitless beings. We dwell in eternity. There is no boundaries. There are no boundaries, and there are no restrictions, and there are no sorrows and frustrations when we make that transition to our true and appropriate identity. So going further here, it says, at one with God and with the universe, we go our way rejoicing, with the thought that God himself goes everywhere with us. So I wanted to reiterate that particular phrase, because once we begin to recognize that we do in fact live and move and have our being in God, we begin to awaken to a much different realm than we currently are imagining ourselves dwelling in. All of a sudden, all the things that were fearful or that were regretful or that were shameful start to dissolve right in front of us. And we begin to see through the illusions, and we begin to see our own truth. And that is a shared experience, because the more we see the truth of others, the more we see our own truth, and vice versa. So the more that you are recognizing the presence of the Christ in those around you, the more that you are going to attune yourself to that same presence within yourself. So it's not really a complex thing. It's a fascinating thing in that we have so much resistance to these ideas because our ego is trying desperately to survive. Once we begin to realize we don't need our ego, then we really are starting to pick up speed. We're beginning to accelerate our journey through the universe and through space and time, till ultimately we get to that place where we move beyond space and time, and we are perpetually living in this moment, which is timeless, which is the only truth that exists. So the second paragraph has got some powerful ideas. It says, how holy are our minds, and everything we see reflects the holiness within the mind at one with God and with itself. How easily do errors disappear and death give place to everlasting life. Our shining footprints point the way to truth. For God is our companion as we walk the world a little while. And we're only here for a brief encounter, as it were. You know, when you start looking at time as it expands out in the billions and billions of years, your lifetime is such a microscopic little flicker in all of this distance of space and time that it is beyond insignificant. And so as we step out of the space-time continuum, we begin to recognize, no, we are life itself, and how powerful an idea that is. Once we get past the smallness of our own ego, we enter into a realm that is so expansive and so limitless that we are astonished that we held on to these ego needs for so long, desperately trying to preserve something that was never real. It says, and those who come to follow us will recognize the way, because the light we carry stays behind. So we're like leaving these tracers through the space-time continuum. And that's kind of a fun idea, you know. We're like those time-lapse photographs where you can write your name with a sparkler, that sort of thing. That's our lives. If we are devoted to the rebirth, the resurrection, the atonement, then we're leaving this sparkling trail behind us that will help others in their journey to a better way of life, to a higher level of existence. So what we receive is our eternal gift to those who follow after, and to those who went before or stayed with us a while. The people that you love, the people that you have had, you know, those types of intimate connections with, who may have passed over or may have been separated from you for whatever circumstances. The truth is, those connections are never broken. There is the illusion that they are no longer connected to you in this lifetime. But the truth is, in reality, you are eternally one with everybody that you have had that strong heart bond with. And the illusion of this world is trying to cause you to feel regret and sorrow and being abandoned, etc., etc. But the truth is, we all live eternally in harmony and in peace and in love in God forever and forever. So everything that we're doing in this lifetime has meaning for eternity. We are reconnecting the people to us that seem to be separate from us. We are reuniting ourselves with this broader vision of creation, because God creates in infinite magnitude. In other words, there's no 1 or 38 or 57. God is not like an assembly plant. God is not this production plant that is stamping out a new model every year. God's creation is infinite. In other words, there are no numbers that can encompass it. And we are part of that creation. So once we get comfortable with the idea that there are no limitations or boundaries on what God has created, and once we begin to recognize that the ideas we have about the people around us, oh, this person down here is a jerk, and that person over there is trying to kill me, and all of these illusions, once we're able to see past the ego and its dynamic, then we begin to step into the truth that everybody that we are connected with, for better or for worse, is a part of God's creation. It is that holy Christ. So only our ego can define people as being evil and villainous and, you know, there to smite us and strike us down, as it were. So there's a lot of smiting and that sort of thing in the Old Testament. And that's why we're moving away from the Old Testament. So this is the new covenant. This is the ideas that Jesus explained to these crowds that were followers of his in his corporeal life. And now he has come back through A Course in Miracles to refine the message, to spread the message, and to share the message with people who are actually capable of comprehending what is being said. So it's really a magnificent task for us to allow ourselves to become a part of his discipleship, where we can begin to penetrate all of these blockages, these blocked ideas, these fears that we have held on to for millennia, and begin to relax into the recognition that we are inseparable from God. There was never a minute of your existence when you were separate from God. So even though you may have believed that there were all these trials and tribulations and upheavals that came along, the truth is God was right there with you, getting you through the situation. Maybe not up to your ego's idea of the standards of the way things should work, but in a way that would cause you to look at the ego and say, why am I invested in this creature that I have created, that in truth has no real life, survives on fear, lives in expectation of death, and ultimately wants to kill me? And that's really where it comes from. That's the bottom line. If you have trouble hearing these ideas, then at some point you are going to have that confrontation where you're going to look at the ego and realize, well, shit, this didn't work out. This isn't a good idea. And that's the beginning of the first step back home. So a little bit further down here, it says, we see in appearances of pain, pardon me, okay. Today we will not doubt his love for us, God's love for us, nor question God's protection and his care. No meaningless anxieties can come between our faith and our awareness of God's presence. We are one with him today in recognition and remembrance. We feel him in our hearts. Our minds contain his thoughts. Our eyes behold his loveliness in all we look upon. Today we will see only the loving and the lovable. Imagine this stepping into a space where you could spend, as this process continues, you can spend more and more time in that state of consciousness where you're no longer seeing the horrors of this world. All of a sudden, your consciousness begins to shift, and you realize, oh, I was seeing illusions that my ego was dragging to my doorstep and setting on fire and ringing the doorbell and running away. You know, we all know those Halloween stories, those jokes about autumn, when you take a gunny sack filled with manure, dose it down with kerosene, and set it on fire on somebody's doorstep and ring the doorbell and run away and hide and watch them try to stamp out the fire. And it's that kind of mischievous and in many ways destructive mindset that the ego is constantly trying to perpetuate in our lives. So every time you turn on the news and watch someplace on the planet getting bombed and other places suffering from drought and all of these bodies being broken and defiled and crunched up and all of this death and destruction that appears so very, very real. See, that is all the ego's agenda. That's really what this world is all about. at one point in the Course, Jesus tells us this world was created to be a slaughterhouse. And when you start looking around, it's like, oh my God, that's reality. That's what this world is. And on a very personal level, your little body that you embrace and may love for all of its attributes, that body survives on death. Something has to die, either a animal or a vegetable or a fruit or something, so that you can consume it. See, so this world is propelled forward by death. Now, the world you can begin to step into is one that is propelled by life, and that is to reclaim your union with God, which you never lost, but you perhaps imagine that you have been separated from God. But the truth is, you can't exist without God. God is life itself. This world is death itself. So it's a matter of making choices. It's a matter of making decisions about where do I want to place my consciousness? Where do I want to place my faith and my trust and my belief and my expectation? If you're placing it in the ego's hands, then it's going to get ugly. And if you're placing it in the hands of the Christ, and the hands of the Holy Spirit, and the hands of light, and the hands of love, then you're going to begin to make that upward journey. It says we see it in appearances of pain, and pain gives way to peace. We see it in the frantic and in the sad and the distressed, the lonely and the afraid, who are restored to the tranquility and peace of mind in which they were created. So this is telling us that we literally, as we shift our acceptance of our identity into that of our God-given, our God-created truth, we alter the space-time continuum that surrounds us. We, by our simple act of trust and faith, elevate literally billions of people. And that is an astonishing idea, but it is a fact. For those who have left this world behind, and yet who still remain in this world, they're the ones who have actual impact, because they're the ones who are bringing the healing and the light into this realm. And you can become a part of this very privileged circle simply by confronting the ego and claiming the truth of who you are. You are God in expression. You are one with God, which was the creator, the first expression. And there is no reason for you to hold on to the shame and the sorrow and the frustration and the darkness of this material world. And we see it in the dying and the dead as well, restoring them to life. And this is an interesting idea also. Jesus had that one instance where Lazarus had been dead for 3 days. And Jesus came along and said, oh, he's not dead, he's sleeping. Lazarus, get up. And woke him up. Well, eventually, it may not be tomorrow, it may not be 6 months from now or 3 incarnations from now, but eventually we will get to that point where we are able to make that demand on our brothers and sisters. All we have to do is live in our truth. And that is the key to literally resurrecting the dead. So we're on a journey to a magnificent outcome. And it's perilous at times, it's hair-raising, it's a psychotic ride on a roller coaster that, you know, challenges any ride on the planet. But I guarantee you that as you begin to make that journey back home, you begin to realize on a subtle level, yes, this is right. These are truths. I am beginning to see a different world. I am beginning to awaken from an old series of patterns that were holding me back. I am beginning to have the experience of what I read in this book. So how about that for an interesting set of ideas? I mean, how often does somebody come along and babble at you like I just did that causes you to stop and ponder, wow, what if this goofy old guy is offering something here that's real, that's tangible, that's solid? And I guarantee you, if you are willing to take a chance, you will discover that the rewards are amazing. The rewards are there. They're tangible. They're viable. They're visual. You can taste them and touch them because the rewards of God transcend this material world. So anyway, we have got my website up and running, which is themiraclewithin.org. And if you go there, you'll find more information on A Course in Miracles, as well as information on other schools of non-dualism. And that's where we're headed with all this, is to arrive at a state where we recognize we survive in a non-dualistic state of being. We are one with God, and God is one with us, and we are one with each other. So anyway, I will be back in 1 week with more babble to share with you. I hope you enjoy these beginnings of the autumnal experience here in the Northern Hemisphere. Go out and buy a pumpkin and stick it on your doorstep, carve it up, and have fun with it. And more importantly, get out there and share the love. Pass the love around. Don't withhold it from anybody. Somebody does something nasty to you and tells you you're an asshole and throws a rock through your window. Shower that person with love, because they are in such pain from whatever is going on in their own consciousness that they desperately, desperately, desperately need your love. So it's not that hard to do. All you have to do is look at the ego and say, no, you get back. You hold back your anger. You hold back your response. So get out there, share the love, pass the love around. We will reconvene in 1 week and enjoy autumn.